Hello, this is Brian Foster, and today I'm talking more about Spiritism. For the past, quite a few Sundays, I have been going through each chapter in the book Evolution in Two Worlds. Now, this book gets very great detail of Spiritism and how we humans on Earth and the organisms and the primitive life has evolved from the spirit world as it leads us, it leads our earthly life and the physical world. This is chapter 10, Speech and Responsibility, by the fantastic medium Chico Xavier and Waldo Veira. It's an excellent book. It gets on a great detail. So if you're interested, this is what Spiritism does. It gives you much more information. It dives deep into the processes, the behaviors, the organization, the different levels of the spirit realm. Now remember, the spirit realm supersedes, is higher than the physical realm. The physical realm is a subset of the spirit realm. Spirit realm is here. We're in a logical construct made to take our spirits from the spirit realm, where thought is action, into the physical realm, where we are somewhat hindered into our great powers of sight and smell and senses, etc. So we have to go through pre-planned trials to change our character and our personality for the better. So this is the chapter 10, Speech Responsibility. Before I begin, please subscribe, hit the bell, and hit the like button. It would help immensely. So let me get started into chapter 10. Let me bring this down. Okay, animal language. Perfecting the workings of the brain, the intelligent principle sense the need to communicate with fellow beings. And when he says intelligent principle, he means the spirit realm. It means the guiding intelligence, the divine intelligence of the spirit realm. Thus, language began to develop among the animals under the sponsorship of the venerable spirits who preside over our existence. Now, let me just tell you a bit, for those who haven't been in other weekends and other Sundays, is each of our animal groups, life forms, bacteria, whatever we have, whatever branch of the organic family you can think of, is guided by different teams of spirits. And one team of spirits may have trees, another team of spirits may have parasites, and these will compete sometimes. Now, the rule is you can't have one to completely destroy the other. There must be some sort of race and some sort of chance for others to evolve. But this is kind of like a creative evolution. Darwin's evolution is correct. In fact, things change, but things change sometimes probably for physical reasons and physical laws in our planet, but also because teams of spirits are working to make small modifications to their DNA to make them whatever they had intended to be. The grand plan by Jesus, who is the leader of the earth and the one who has set broad guidelines for the evolution of life on earth and for our society. This is why now we're moving from a planet of atonement to a planet of regeneration, because of the broad guidelines he said that this is the time things are going to happen on this earth which will help move us up the spiritual and maturity ladder. So we carry on. At first, phonemes and mimicry were processes indispensable for exchanging impressions or for defense. For example, the hiss of various reptiles, the croak of amphibians, the sonorous expression of birds, and the mimicry of certain insects and vertebrates when they suddenly change their color to protect themselves from danger. However, as it climbed the evolutionary ladder, the fragmentary consciousness was invested with broader resources. The wolf howls to its companions in the nighttime darkness. The enraged cat expresses its fury by meowing angrily. The horse whinnies in different ways to express contentment or discontentment. The hen chucks fittingly to announce it has laid an egg, to nestle or feed its chicks, or to cry for help when frightened. And the dog is nearly human, with its signs of contentment and yelps of pain. So as you can see, it's not as if we have animal kingdom and human kingdom, and it just, and everything just, there's a complete delineation of intelligence and instinct and free will. Now, there's only true free will in the human soul, but as like in dogs and dolphins and elephants, they have some free will. They have some concept of things that they like, whereas that's most of the lower, of course, insects and lower animals are mainly supplied by instinct. But as you go higher and higher, it's getting these animals ready. So someday the spirit, every animal has a spirit. And let's say, when he talks about the wolf, let's say the wolf dies. The wolf will go into the spirit land. It will wander around wherever it was assigned to. It won't eat or hunt anything because it's never hungry. Its instinct says, I don't eat till I'm hungry, but it's not hungry because it gets sustenance from the air and from water and the sunlight. And so the animals are all nice. In the spirit world, you can wander around and you're in great shape. But then that spirit will when it's assigned to a wolf pup or whatever, it will go back into that, and it will control by that paraspirit that wolf. Now, that spirit is a immature logical construct that is learning how to control higher and higher animals as it goes up. Whereas we as humans have been through that process, and we are now controlling humans, and in controlling humans or human-like other life on other planets, we are learning to then erase and replace our previous emotions, hate, anger, just want for revenge, all those emotions that actually did pretty well for us as more primitive animals, so we could survive on these platforms that mimic physical life. But now we're ready to climb up the evolutionary ladder into more advanced life, where we have to replace the hate and envy and jealousy with love and charity, fraternity, and being honest. So as he's saying, as they created these animals, they also gave them evolutionary ladder. He says, then he says about interventions by spirits. After having reached the threshold of humanity, the spiritual body of the infra-primitive human being remains a long time in suitable regions in space under the assistance of the instructors of the spirit, undergoing subtle interventions in the pertinent elements of phonation so that articulated speech could mark a new cycle of progress. Now, this is interesting. This I have not seen anywhere else, where he's saying that once someone who's done something lower than humans is now ready for humans, they have to kind of start training them how to use their voice, right? How to really articulate speech to communicate. So that's interesting. But this shows you the complex processes of the spirit realm and how they affect us. People, and I used to think the same way. I used to think that, well, yes, there's a God, but God is so far away. No, they're all around us, and we're being watched every single advancement throughout our whole lives, from when we're primitive little applications just to mimic a rock, let's say, to something higher like a wolf, to then now where we are as a free-willed spirit, as a human. I'll carry on. The larynx, situated above the trachea and head of the pharynx, consubstantiated in cartilaginous framework, meaning your cartilage, woven of fibers and ligaments with a selection of small muscles, undergoes delicate operations over the course of centuries in the wise hand of spirit administrators. So these are people who are delicately changing our DNA to change how our larynx, our throat works, how when we blow out air, we can communicate and make sound. Carry on. Like a priceless organ in the hands of expert surgeons, so that such muscles become symmetrical and connected as skillfully as possible for the physiological production of the voice. In its inner structure, a ciliated mucus, I'm pronouncing that wrong, mucosa, destined for emitting sound, is layered, running along narrow pathways, and is transformed into a stratified squamous epithelium lining on the free edge of the true vocal cords. Apart from the action of the vocal cords, larynx displays movements of ascent and descent in the neck, rising during exhalation and swallowing, and lowering during inhalation, suction and yawning, showing itself to be as a perfect instrument of musical effects in the body. Next section is headed The Mechanisms of Speech. With the utmost care put into the slow process, technicians from the higher realms mold the cartilage located on the lower surface, the cricoid cartilage, which represents a modified ring of the trachea with a lamina in the posterior part, upon which, in the upper surface and on both sides of the middle, the two arytenoids are supported. So he goes into great detail. And he says, using the same skills, the technicians weave the cartilage located in the anterior area of the thyroid cartilage under the skin in the so-called Adam's apple. So what he's talking about is this throat, this mechanism is being built over time and designed and changed. It's dynamic until they find what they want. Now, when they find what they want, what does that mean? So it's very interesting. In the books by G. Val Owen, there's, and actually I talked about this in my book. There we go. Spirits in the Spirit Universe. And so what happens is, this is what's so interesting about Spiritism and what's the revelations given to us, is it works a lot like on Earth. So what do I mean by that? So broad orders are given by God to very high spirits. What they are, I don't know. There are spirits higher than Jesus. Jesus is in charge of 5 planets, I believe, of which Earth is one of them. Broad directives are given to people, the spirits who can communicate with the messages of God. They bring down, okay, broader directives. And then finally, this get to the management level, let's say, of Jesus. And Jesus then sends that management, that directive, and he refines it. He fills in detail. He understands what's behind what those directives are. And he sends them to teams of spirits and onward, downward. So when teams of spirits say, let's say they're working with vocal cords, they say, we need a human that can articulate speech. And then they work on that. And they're given a broad pathway to implement that directive. And I talk about the spirit and the spirit universe, and how spirits are organized, how spirits are educated, how they rise from one level to the next, how they finally rise above the levels of Earth, and they actually go and they help other cultures, other planets, it could be Earth or it could be other planets, of whole races and animals to go from primitive humans to more advanced humans, etc., and to guide the evolution. So this is why there's exciting work ready for you in the spirit world. There are more jobs out there that you would say, oh, I just love to have that job, guiding the history of a whole culture. But that sounds exciting to me. Or maybe just guiding the beginnings of a primitive forest. Who knows? Those are all jobs available for you, as well as other jobs, like control of cities and water supply, things like that. So conventional language. Next, with the help of the wise tutors who inspire them, the human beings learn the mechanical constitution of speech. The fourth, with which it activates implements of the voice, come from the mind, generating vibrations in the thoracic muscles, including the lungs and the trachea, as in bellows, making sound resonate in the larynx and mouth. So this is where, at last, there is conventional language. And of course, spirits, souls on Earth need to have language so we can communicate, we can advance ourselves, we can invent, and we can communicate those new inventions. To this natural way of expressing themselves through gestures and silent postures, pouring their accumulated energies of affectivity and satisfaction, displeasure or rancor, and the fluidic electromagnetic discharges of a constructive or destructive nature, human beings superimpose the qualities of articulated speech. With it, they refine their innermost manifestations, enabling themselves to gather, by means of a special signage on the scale of sounds, the experience of other fellow beings that progress ahead of them, learning to educate themselves to deserve this type of assistance, which will warrant a greater state of happiness at the perspective of acquiring knowledge through the answers to their questioning. So they're building up like a whole Socratic dialogue. They're building up where the young can hear their parents, hear the old wise men and women, they can learn. And so therefore, if like the animals who have no written words and their speech is extremely limited, their ability to learn and to advance themselves is extremely limited. A tiger is a tiger. The tiger's been tiger for how many hundreds of thousands of years? They don't advance. One of the factors of that is the ability to speak and then interpret that speech. So this is why humans have the ability to speak, because the spirit world wants us to advance. They want us to technologically advance. Now, many people say, oh, we should go back to the more simple life and just farm. No, that's not what the spirit world wants. Now, you can certainly make the argument is that most of our technological advance has been destructive to the environment, has been advances to make war more efficient and more cruel, and the spirit world understands that. And that's why we will have to grow out of that phase. And in fact, the phase we're right now in, they've said, is kind of the penultimate of materialism. And what they're trying to do now is take us from a planet of atonement to a planet of regeneration, is to take some of that materialism and then tone it down and put it more into being spiritual and more spiritualism, and for us to decide for ourselves through our own education and our own personal growth that we should not engage in destructive behavior. Let me tell you something, that when there's people who believe, and I do, in old ancient civilizations like Lemuria and Atlantis. Well, the spirits have told us that there's actually been more than Lemuria and Atlantis. Lemuria first, Atlantis, and there's actually been some other ones that they have completely destroyed because human beings have become technologically very advanced. In fact, I believe the spirit Emmanuel said at one time the Atlanteans even had like laser beams and communication, wireless, I believe, and that they were advanced technologically, but spiritually they weren't, and therefore their civilization was destroyed to start over. An example of that in a smaller scale is Rome. Rome was supposed to be this great city on the hill. They were supposed to be a beacon of civilization to other people around them. Instead, they were militarily more efficient, and they conquered and accumulated wealth instead of helping others with their education. And therefore, Rome was allowed to completely implode upon itself, and the Dark Ages happened. And they said this was on purpose. They sent all these souls who were senators and generals and soldiers of Rome and put them back into the field so they could get back more in touch with their nature. So now, I do believe, and we've been told by Spiritist mediums, and also it's been a lot of talk by Christian prophets, that we're in the cusp of a new era, a new spiritual era. And the Spiritist mediums say we're starting to be a planet of regeneration. So this culture is not going to be destroyed. It could have been. In fact, I have a video on that. There was a prophecy by Chico that in 1969, these high spirits met and they said, I think the humans are, this is 1969 when men went to the moon. Their technological abilities are going beyond their spiritual abilities. And Jesus intervened and said, look, if we don't have nuclear war for 50 years, let's go to the next level. And I said, okay. And that was done in 2019 in July when men went to the moon in 1969. So therefore, many things will happen after that fact, and things have been happening. In fact, they said within, I believe within 10 to 20 years, maybe sooner, we will actually see aliens come to the planet. That'd be all part. And of course, the aliens, don't worry about them. I mean, some of them are not so perfect, right? But they're not going to do anything that is in direct contradiction to the rules of Jesus Christ. They understand spirits are in control of this planet. They themselves understand that they are immortal souls that will go back into the spirit world. Therefore, this will be tightly controlled. That doesn't mean there's not some downside. I always warn people about that. In fact, the very tall aliens could be somewhat of a danger. The shorter ones are more benign and will help us. But you know, this is good for us. We're going to be exposed to all sorts of types. Just like when your kid goes to college and they sign their first lease in an apartment, and you know that leasing agent just, you know, fooled them or whatever. But that's all part of experience of learning how to be careful. So this is all part of the advancement of humankind, human evolution. So now let's go to the section continuous thought. With the incessant and easy practice of speech, the mental energy of the primitive human being undergoes unstoppable development by gradually acquiring the mobility and elasticity crucial for the expansion of thought, which then progressively expands, establishing in the tribal world an energy of subtle energy, an ocean of subtle energy, where incarnate and discarnate minds reflect each other without difficulty. Making use of this institution of constant change, the divine intelligence weighs the elements of influence and suggestions and invite the earthbound spirit to awaken to the responsibility of conducting its own journey. Now, when he says the elements of influence and suggestion, so as Allan Kardec has said in the book of mediumship, is that we're all intuitive mediums. I mean, we all can hear suggestions from spirits. Now, we can hear suggestions from not very good spirits, spirits who are not in our own best interest. We also hear suggestions from advanced spirits. In fact, what they say is most inventions and discoveries are due to the inspiration by other spirits. So the other thing, though, as I said before, we're talked to by many different levels of spirits. That's why we have our conscience. So we can filter out these not so great ideas, right? When we kind of want to be jealous or possessive or cheat someone in order to, you know, advance our own, you know, whatever we want, our own desires, those we need to learn to filter out. That's why we're on Earth, to learn to filter out those things. Through progressive comprehension between individuals by means of speech that ensures ready communication, continuous thought is established in the brain. Through such a wonder of the soul, the flash ideas or fragmentary ideas in the chrysalis of consciousness in the animal kingdom are transformed into concept and questions, translating desires and ideas of dynamic inner substance. So we become more complex. Starting to fixate thought within themselves, working tirelessly to string it together and express it, human beings entrust themselves to a new type of repose, compulsory reflection regarding their own life's problems, and proceeding to unconsciously exteriorize their own ideas. That means create, right? We think of, oh, we could have shelter, or if we make something round, we can transport things, right? And that's exteriorize their own ideas. Now, carry on with that. They become able to leave the dense physical body by disengaging the cells of their spiritual body from the physical cells during ordinary sleep, in order to receive next to the sleeping body, either in passive or brief interactive encounter, visits from spirit benefactors and instruct them on moral issues. And of course, this is what we're told to by Spiritism, that when we sleep, it is said, as a saint said, we die every time we go to sleep. When we sleep, we free ourselves of our physical body and we can roam the spirit world. Now, we can roam that for our own dark desires and encounter people on a very primitive level, or we can leave our body and talk to higher spirits and receive moral lessons, as they said. We can receive ideas for it in art, and we can receive ideas for inventions. I'm sure that someone like Edison, you know, who just created all sorts of inventions, the phonograph, you know, he did the telegraph and electric light. I'm sure he received a lot of inspiration from the spirit world during his sleep. So this is why we're all, I mean, we are so interactive with the spirit world that for not one moment should you think, no one loves me, I'm all alone. No, well, yes, I mean, I understand you feel that, because when you're in the spirit world, you never feel all alone or unloved, because when you're in heaven, you're surrounded by people who love you. Now, if you came from the lower zone or the dark abyss, which is a type of purgatory, people are pretty mean to you down there because of the law of affinity. You are with other people like you, and it may not bother you as much. But if you came from an advanced planet or from heaven, you feel just normally, you feel disconnected, and that is on purpose. Now, there's bad things about that, is you feel disconnected and you may be a little bit depressed, but the good part is what it does is it makes you analyze your own thought processes. And therefore, when you go through life and you go through these episodes, these, you know, dramatic episodes, the blueprint of your life, the programs that you need to go through where things happen to you, and it forces you to analyze your actions and change your brain wiring, right? You're changing your character and your attitude and your personality for the better. And that is a good part. Because if you were too comfortable in heaven, you don't need to go through that deep analysis and that kind of deep despair and suffering. And in fact, that is, you know, the spirits of saying, you know, pain is the great teacher, unfortunately. And of course you could say, well, why do we have to go through pain? Can't they just tell me? And the answer is yes, they can tell you, and do tell you many, many times. And yet we are so stubborn that we will not pay attention to what we are told and what we know is right, and we will rationalize away our own conscience. And then what happens is that you have to go through more and more severe trials to get you to get off that, you know, that petty primitive emotion of wanting revenge or wanting money all the time. So it's the really severe trials are because we've done something like that in the past to others, but mainly from the very foundation of that is because we, in much more previous lives, we never learned what was told to us, and we just kept wanting what we want. Of course, you know, that drive for hoarding and taking what we want did us really well as a primitive spirit. We survived. Now we have to learn how to do without that. Okay, next section is evolutionary struggle. An enormous struggle begins to take place involving the soul, which inquiries life, which is expanding, anxiety, which is increasing, and the spirit, which responds to the spirit in the realm of pure intuition. Human beings who used to chip stone and hide in caves, enslaving others with the violence of wild beasts and indiscriminately killing in order to survive, yes, we've all been there, are urged by the instructor friends who aid them on their pathway to begin to ask about the causes of things. Constrained to accept the principles of renewal and progress, they take refuge in selfish love, in closeness with the offspring that occupy their inner world, helping them to think. They find themselves affected by a strange metamorphosis. So, the spirit world is patient. The spirit world knows that as we start out as primitive souls, we have a lot to learn, and we have a lot of lessons. It's just like letting your 2-year-old or 3-year-old do some stupid thing so they learn. You tell them, but sometimes that doesn't work. You have to let them, you know, learn by doing at a certain point. They let us learn by doing. And of course, rewiring your whole cultural foundation and your way of approaching things is not an easy task. That is, controlling your mind is the most difficult task in the world. Getting rich is not that difficult. Being famous is not that difficult compared to actually rewiring your brain. It takes years and years. And, you know, I'm not even close to there yet. And so it's extremely difficult, but it can be done. Let me continue. They instinctively perceive that they can no longer let themselves be guided by the excitability of their organic tissues or by the ferocious appetites inherited from the animals. So these primitive tribesmen, right, are starting to learn, yeah, maybe I need to work with people, or maybe I can't just go kill that person because I want that clay pot he has, because then other people may not trust me and they may kill me in return. Start thinking about these things. And maybe I should cooperate with other tribesmen, not kill them. I carry on. Slowly disconnected from the stronger ties that used to bind them to the divine intelligence, who guided their development in order for them to firm up their own guidelines, they feel all alone, crushed by the grandeur of the universe. The moral idea about life begins to occupy their minds. So as primitive tribesmen, they start thinking, well, there's got to be something beyond this. And that's where we have all these mythologies and pretty good ideas, because these people are influenced by spirits. And in fact, a lot of these primitive tribesmen knew about spirits and how they affect us more than we know here as modern humans. Because someone like me talking, people say, oh, Brian, you're an idiot. There's not spirits all around us. Show me the proof. Well, each of us has their own proof, and it's for each of us to decide. I mean, I have my proof. I'm totally certain, because of what I've been through and things that my wife told me from her things that mediums told her, and her NDE of things in the future that happened in great detail. That's my proof. But we all have our own proof. And God's not going to come down and say, I'm God, here's my proof. And poof, he'll make everybody 5 inches taller or whatever. That's not going to rewire your brain. That's not going to make your personality better. That's just going to make you say, oh my God, there's a God. I should be scared of doing something wrong. It's not going to make you foundationally a nice person. It's going to make you a person frightened into obedience. That's why the spirit world is so smart, because they're giving us this planet called Earth, which is chaotic and cruel to us, but it's actually just a big classroom. And it's actually for us to transform ourselves. I cannot force you into becoming a good moral person. Only you can do that. And you do that by these, what you think are chaotic happenstances. And then you learn through these things. Sometimes you don't learn. Sometimes you go through life after life kind of parked at your own level. I know I've done. But sometimes that one life just like opens things up and you make an advancement. This could go on for thousands and thousands of years, and who knows how many lives. Now carry on. The sun provides them with a notion of a creator hidden in the invisible bosom of nature, while nights fill their souls with nebulous visions and imaginary nightmares, giving them the idea of an ongoing battle where light and darkness are at war with each other. They embrace their little ones with fierce tenderness, seeking possible solidarity with their fellow beings in the wild, threatening jungle. They form families and suffer in defense of their home. This fragmentary inquiries that arise within them fill them with affliction and fear. They perceive that they can no longer blindly obey the impulses of nature like the animals that share their environment, but they must now surpass their behavior as those who see the world in which they live as their own dwelling place, whose order demands their support and cooperation. So this intelligence, this ability to speak, is forcing people into more tribal societies. And as they become tribal societies, they become a little more sophisticated. And then other spirits come and tell them, maybe you can plant those seeds, right? There's farming. Maybe you can create a hole. Maybe you can create a will. All of these things. And then they talk about the mythology, we're good and evil and all that. They're trying to open up, instead of their impulses of want and feed and survival, is to start thinking spiritually. This is kind of the first inklings of thinking spiritually. The next section is the birth of responsibility. The notion of God initiating religion, inquiry, foretelling philosophy, experimentation, forecasting science, the instinct of solidarity, presaging true love, and the thirst for comfort and beauty, inspiring the birth of the industries and the arts, are nebulous thoughts hammering their minds and inflaming their sentiments. In this concert of forces, death begins to beset them with anguishing questions as they bury their loved ones in sculptures of stone, early humans initiating their evolution of a moral nature, lost in the desert vastness of the Paleolithic age, learn to weep, love, and question in order to adjust themselves to the divine laws being sculpted in the moral and invisible face of their own consciousness. Realizing that they are small and fragile before life struggles, they understand that before God, their creator and father, they are left to themselves. The principle of responsibility is born. So from speech becomes all this, because it is the first cornerstone of what we need in order to start advancing in thought and culture and civilization at all. So this is where the spirit, this is where, so this did not all happen randomly. This was all finally kind of guided to us by the spirit world. And this is what's so interesting. And I talk about how we are guided by spirits in my book 3 of my 3 different books. The first one is Heaven and Below. And this is, and the second one was Spirits and Spirit Universe. This is the third book of Spiritism, the Spirit World Revealed to an Anglican Vicar, of how we are guided by spirits. And I talk about how there was Atlantis, Lemuria, whole cultures are guided, nations rise and fall, races rise and fall. And whatever we are now today is all temporary. This is not important. Whatever race, culture you're in, or what you think is the greatest thing, you never want that to disappear. Well, the whole earth shall disappear someday. But we'll still be alive, we'll still be immortal, we'll still be in great shape. And who knows what form we'll be in, if we still incarnate or not. It's all up to us. We will all ascend someday. That is the goal, right? This is how we are guided by spirits. That shows us the goal is to become a perfect human. Now, if you'd like to understand kind of more of the holistic view of the spirit universes and the physical universe and how it all relates, and how we are all in, kind of the whole story of it all, I recommend my newest book, The Spirit Realm, Spiritism Has Revealed the Reality of Our Existence. And that will really go through, and I take this from everything I've learned from reading lots of spiritist literature and other mediumistic literature, is what is the spirit realm, how that is the supersedes the physical realm. The physical realm is a subset of the spirit realm. What are spirits? Who is God? Who's Jesus in relation to us? What he means to us? How we are spirits ascend? How we learn? What we are here on earth to learn for? What we do? And what is our future? All things very important to understand. Now, why do I say it's important to understand? Because we all go through our life. We work. We, try to buy things, you try to live nicely. Why is it important to understand the spirit realm? Because everything that happens to us, almost, it's not, maybe not everything, but all these little episodes and trials and tribulations are all there for a reason. And the more you understand that they are there for a reason, which is to rewire our personality and our character, the less stressed you are, because you understand, oh, okay, I lost that investment, but I must have taken something from somebody's at some previous life. So I understand I need to learn to not to depend so much on my material wants and more increase my spiritual quotient. So these things we need to understand. Like, we should not gossip, but we really need to not just keep our mouth closed when we say something mean. We need to rewire our brain and not malicious gossip. Don't even think bad about people. Try to help people. Everyone's in their own trajectory of their spiritual ascendancy. Some are less mature. I mean, you'll see that people who probably rob and still commit crimes. Not all, but most of them are more primitive spirits or ignorant spirits. They're not essentially evil or anything like that. They just grab what they want to grab because that's what they've done in the past. And, it's worked real well for them. They've survived other lives. Now on this earth and this time of our culture, it's not such a great idea, but they do it because that's what is used to them, and they have not changed their character and personality. That doesn't mean they shouldn't go to jail, but I'm just saying that it's someday that they will improve and they'll become a great person. You just have to look at that. You have to forgive. That's like Jesus says, forgive 70 times 70. So I hope this helps everyone. I hope people enjoyed this Sunday. And I want to say that I will have, this is again, I do this Sunday, I'm talking about the evolution through worlds. Then I'll talk about other things as we go on. On Tuesday, I'm talking about Wander in the Spirit Land, and which is very interesting. I live stream around 4 p.m. Eastern. It depends on the time changes too. Could be 4 or 5. And then I also upload videos. So again, please give a subscribe, give us a like, and give us a thumbs up, and hit the bell. That will all help us spread Spiritism, why we're here, to the world in general. God bless everyone.